November 22nd, 1963. Dallas, Texas, 12:30 p.m. Three shots ring out in Dealey Plaza, and in just 6 seconds, the course of American history changes forever. President John F. Kennedy is dead, and with him dies the public's faith in simple explanations. What should have been a straightforward criminal investigation has become the most debated mystery in modern American history. For over 60 years, three competing theories have dominated the conversation about who really killed JFK. Was it a lone gunman acting out his twisted fantasies? Was it a shadowy government agency eliminating a president who threatened their operations? Or was it organized crime settling a deadly score with a family that betrayed them? Here's what makes this case so fascinating. We're not just dealing with missing evidence or conflicting witness accounts. We're dealing with something far more complex. Every single theory has compelling evidence supporting it, and every single theory has glaring holes that seem impossible to explain away. The official story tells us that Lee Harvey Oswald, a disgruntled ex-Marine with communist sympathies, acted alone. The Warren Commission spent 10 months investigating and concluded that Oswald fired 3 shots from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository, killing the president and wounding Texas Governor John Connally. But here's where things get interesting. In 2024, newly released documents revealed something that should shake your confidence in that official narrative. The CIA itself didn't believe the lone gunman theory. Top officials at the CIA station in Miami were investigating Cuban exiles known to the agency for orchestrating the ambush in Dealey Plaza. Not Oswald, not Fidel Castro, not the KGB. Cuban exiles connected to the CIA. So why would the CIA investigate their own people if they truly believed Oswald acted alone? Let's examine what we know about Lee Harvey Oswald. This wasn't some random nobody who snapped one day. Oswald had a documented history with both the Soviet Union and Cuba. In 1959, he defected to the Soviet Union and renounced his American citizenship. But then, mysteriously, he returned to the United States in 1962 with his Russian wife. Just weeks before the assassination, Oswald visited both Soviet and Cuban embassies in Mexico City. Intelligence reports show he was flirting with the idea of defecting to Cuba and met with both Cuban and Soviet diplomats. US intelligence agencies were monitoring him closely after his return from Russia. But here's what doesn't add up. If Oswald was planning to assassinate the president, why would he visit communist embassies where he knew American intelligence was watching? And if he was working for the Soviets or Cubans, why would they choose someone so obviously on the government's radar? The CIA conspiracy theory gains traction when you understand the relationship between Kennedy and the intelligence community. It wasn't good. After the disastrous Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961, Kennedy reportedly said he wanted to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it into the winds. Documents confirm there was serious mistrust between JFK and the agency. A 15-page memo revealed wariness between Kennedy and CIA leadership. Kennedy aide Arthur Schlesinger wrote a scathing critique of the CIA after Bay of Pigs, accusing them of undermining the State Department and embarrassing American foreign policy. But the tension went deeper than just Bay of Pigs. Kennedy was moving toward nuclear disarmament and exploring rapprochement with Castro's Cuba. For anti-communist hardliners within the CIA, this represented a fundamental threat to their Cold War mission. Former CIA agent E. Howard Hunt allegedly confessed to his son about knowledge of a JFK conspiracy. Before his death in 2007, Hunt authored an autobiography implicating Lyndon B. Johnson in the assassination, suggesting Johnson orchestrated the killing with help from CIA agents who were angered by Kennedy's policies. Now let's turn to the organized crime theory, because this is where the story gets really dark. The Kennedy administration launched an unprecedented assault on organized crime. Attorney General Robert Kennedy targeted Teamster boss Jimmy Hoffa and deported New Orleans crime boss Carlos Marcello to Guatemala. The mob felt betrayed because they had allegedly helped JFK win the 1960 election. Chicago godfather Sam Giancana had worked with the Kennedy family during the election, and Miami mobster Santos Traficante had even aided CIA attempts to assassinate Castro. Instead of loyalty, they got the most aggressive anti-organized crime campaign in American history. The House Select Committee on Assassinations found that Hoffa, Marcello, and Traficante all had the motive, means, and opportunity to kill Kennedy. Hoffa told a federal informant he wanted to kill Robert Kennedy, but that John was the better target because when you cut down the tree, the branches fall with it. But here's where the mob theory gets really interesting. It wasn't just about revenge against the Kennedys. The mob had deep connections to anti-Castro Cuban exiles through the Havana casinos they operated before the Cuban Revolution. When Castro took power, organized crime lost millions in gambling revenue. So you had three groups with a shared hatred for Kennedy's policies: the CIA, the mob, and Cuban exiles. And according to multiple researchers, these three groups were all working together at the time in their fight to topple Castro. This brings us to one of the most suspicious figures in the entire case: Jack Ruby. Ruby wasn't just some random nightclub owner who got emotional and shot Oswald. He had documented connections to organized crime figures across the country. In the months before the assassination, Ruby made a 25-fold increase in out-of-state phone calls to associates of crime bosses. On October 30th, 1963, less than a month before the assassination, Ruby called a trailer park in New Orleans. But this wasn't just any trailer park. The call went to the office of Nofio Pecora, a lieutenant to New Orleans godfather Carlos Marcello. The same Carlos Marcello who had reportedly talked about killing the president. The night before Kennedy was assassinated, Ruby had dinner at the Egyptian Lounge, which was run by Sam and Joe Campisi. These weren't small-time operators. The Campisis were leading figures in the Dallas underworld and lieutenants of Carlos Marcello. After Ruby killed Oswald and was thrown in jail, Joe Campisi regularly visited him. Ruby also had connections to Louis McWillie, who worked in Cuban casinos run by mob financier Meyer Lansky and Tampa's Traficante. In August 1959, Ruby visited McWillie in Cuba, where McWillie was supervising gambling at Havana's Tropicana Club. Ruby claimed it was a social visit, but the House Select Committee on Assassinations concluded he was most likely serving as a courier for gambling interests. Here's what makes Ruby's story so suspicious. If you're going to silence someone to cover up a conspiracy, you don't rely on an emotional nightclub owner to do it on impulse. But if Ruby was connected to organized crime, and if the mob was involved in the assassination, then his killing of Oswald makes perfect sense. Except there's a problem with this theory too. FBI agent Bill Romer, who investigated the Chicago Mafia for years, said Ruby was absolutely nothing in terms of organized crime. The FBI had thousands of hours of tape recordings of top mobsters, including Sam Giancana, and Ruby didn't even register on their radar. Top mob figures and informants didn't even know who Ruby was. And here's the bigger problem with any conspiracy theory involving Oswald as a patsy. If there really was a plot to kill Kennedy and then silence Oswald, why was Oswald allowed to escape alive from the book depository? The 3 days between the assassination and Oswald's death gave him plenty of time to expose any conspiracy if one existed. But if Oswald truly knew nothing because he was just a patsy, then there was no reason to kill him at all. This is what makes the JFK assassination so maddening. Every theory seems compelling until you dig deeper. The lone gunman theory struggles to explain Oswald's connections to intelligence agencies and his suspicious activities before the assassination. The CIA theory can't adequately explain why they would choose such an obvious suspect. The mob theory falls apart when you examine Ruby's actual status in organized crime. Even today, after decades of document releases and investigations, polling shows Americans remain divided. 20% believe Oswald conspired with the US government. 16% suspect he worked with the CIA. Others point to foreign adversaries, Vice President Johnson, or various combinations of these groups. The 2025 document releases provided new insights into Cold War intelligence operations, but they haven't fundamentally changed what historians believe about the assassination. Most experts still maintain that the evidence supports Oswald acting alone. But here's what we can't ignore. The same government agencies that concluded Oswald acted alone were also running illegal domestic surveillance programs, overthrowing foreign governments, and conducting mind control experiments on American citizens. The same organized crime families that supposedly had no involvement in Dallas were simultaneously working with the CIA to assassinate foreign leaders. So when we ask who killed JFK, we're not just asking about one man's death. We're asking whether we can trust the institutions that investigated it. So where does that leave us 60 years later? We've examined 3 theories, each with compelling evidence and each with fatal flaws. The lone gunman theory relies on accepting that a troubled ex-Marine with communist sympathies could single-handedly change American history. The CIA theory asks us to believe that America's intelligence apparatus would eliminate its own president. The mob theory suggests organized crime had both the sophistication to plan the perfect political assassination and the stupidity to use Jack Ruby as their cleanup man. Maybe that's the real lesson of November 22nd, 1963. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved with absolute certainty. What we're left with is something more unsettling than any single conspiracy theory could provide. We're left with the knowledge that the line between official truth and hidden reality is thinner than we'd like to believe. The Kennedy assassination didn't just kill a president. It killed America's faith in simple answers. And perhaps that's exactly what happened in Dealey Plaza that day. Not a lone gunman, not a CIA plot, not a mob hit. But the moment when the American people realized that the truth might be far more complicated than any official commission would ever admit. The files may be released, the witnesses may be dead, and the investigations may be closed. But the questions remain. And maybe that's the point.